Okay, I think we're live. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. This is Smudboy again every Sunday doing a live broadcast. And today we have a special treat. After getting all this weird press of other games not doing too well in the marketplace, science fiction or other genres involved, here we look to the smaller teams, the mom and pop shops, the guys who actually have the passion but not the budget to do good quality artwork. And these are the people, Blake and Mandy of Kova, on Kickstarter right now, doing a side-scrolling action RPG. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Well, I love going to Kickstarter because whenever my feelings are down, I look to the community and see these wonderful little projects, little gems that just need a little bit of push, and there they go. And this one, it looks promising to me because for me, I love side-scrollers, I love RPGs, and I love science fiction, and it just sort of, this is a nice little package of that. So go ahead and introduce your project, because I could probably gush about it, but I'm sure you can do a better job than I can.
Okay, so yeah, we're doing Kova, which is, it's a 2D side-scroller metroidvania RPG. That's a mouthful. It's inspired by games like Metroid, obviously, other side-scrollers like that. But we're taking also elements from games like Mass Effect, and even shooter games like Halo or other FPSs sci-fi FPSs out there. You want to go over Kova's story there?
Yeah, basically, you start out the game where you're flying through space as Kova. She's kind of a loner mercenary. She's had a rough history, and she's just kind of taken on the role of surviving in this harsh galaxy. As she's heading back to the closest hub, she gets interdicted by another ship, and it shoots her out of the sky. So she crash lands on this icy planet, uninhabited, trying to put her ship back together. And as she's finding all the pieces and mining resources to, craft everything to get her ship back online, she comes across this beacon, and it's alien in nature. And so she's basically picked up something that it's given to her. It's given her some kind of chip that's been encrypted for eons. And so she takes it over to the local hub to an engineer that can hopefully decrypt it for her. And basically, as playing through the game, you'll find all these other beacons that have come online as a result of this first beacon. And so you'll be searching for all of them. And as you visit each one, it'll hand you a new piece of the puzzle. And so you're basically going through solving the Fermi paradox in a way.
Yes, so we have basically there's like 6 planets, and each planet has its own town hub, as we call it. And on each hub, there's a bar, there's an engineer, there's a store, so you can go and talk to all these different people, and each one of these hubs have their own personalities. So along the way, not only is there the narrative story of going through the game and doing those missions, there's also the side objectives with people that you'll talk to. And it's kind of semi-open world too, so you may be on one planet hub and get a mission that kind of puts you back onto a different planet or onto a new planet. It's not extremely linear in fashion. It's kind of it's a little bit different in that for a 2D game, and that it's kind of open. I mean, I guess Metroid and some of those games have done that in a little bit, but we're pushing the boundaries a little bit more.
Okay, so you have like primary missions, which is the main story, and then you have secondary missions, which come up as you discover them, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you can talk to all the different locals at the different planet hubs and see what they have for you. Completing different missions will give you different either abilities or weapons or just galactic credits that you can use to buy other things.
Okay, so Kova's that's the name of the character you play, and she's kind of like a mercenary. Is this like a mercenary story, or is this like a story of discovery? Is it sort of trying to survive? What's the general feeling of the story here?
Honestly, it's all three. We've wrapped up kind of the feel of everything. Like we definitely want there to be some running gunning in the game, and we definitely want it to be atmospheric. We want you to take your time and discover all these cool things. There's also 3 different factions that you'll run into, and they'll hire you for certain missions, different missions depending on the different factions. So,
but the overall narrative is discovery.
Yeah.
You're trying to find out what these beacons are representing, and that's kind of the mystery of the game. That's one thing we're trying not to say too much about, because what it kind of evolves into plays into the Fermi paradox, which is a major point of the story.
And we can definitely talk about the Fermi paradox later. I don't want to spoil anything because that's always an interesting stuff to talk about, mathematics and other things about the universe. So that's really cool that you guys do have this science fiction feeling to things, as well as a story to go with a character and some action gameplay. Now, I saw the beautiful trailer. It looks like a colorful game. I mean, I can tell from the, I guess you can call a rugged mercenary, futuristic, brutal sort of alien environment is colorful. But you also use lighting a lot, and there's some darkness in some scenes, like with the firefights. Is that a design choice of the levels, or is that just like, oh, we're just going to want flashy effects? Like, what's the idea behind using lighting in your level design?
No, it's definitely intentional. The thing that when we go into making any of these levels is that we want to have an atmosphere that's just really very present. A lot of games I'll play, I just feel like that they have an opportunity to like get the atmosphere down, but it's just missing for some reason. So we're using lighting and atmospheric effects, and obviously color choice, the color palette to really represent the atmosphere that we're trying to pull off.
Interesting. Okay, so you guys have, according to your video, about 15 years of experience in the industry. Is that all just mobile stuff? Is this all side-scroller stuff? Is it some particular reason you want to tell this story or play this game as a side-scroller? Is there something that you can share with us there?
It's not all from mobile. I used to work in local game companies in Austin. Most of it was working on arcade work, like dance games. So it's not exactly like translating to the type of game that we're working on now, aside from the fact that it's industry experience. But I think what we're trying to do now is the game that's kind of led up from, the day that we started working in games to working on different types of games, and then finally being able to break off, go independent, and make the game that we want to make, which is also why we turned to Kickstarter, because we know that there's other people out there, but it's kind of risky for publishers to get involved in like a 2D sci-fi whatever game that's kind of mixing genres. So I think that the end game is really that we're just trying to, it's all kind of led up to this for us personally, because we're both in our early 30s and we grew up playing 2D games, but we also played a lot of sci-fi shooters, and we're influenced by movies like Blade Runner and Aliens and all this. So it's all kind of gone into our head, both of us. And then we're just kind of like spilling it out. This is the creation.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry. Basically, when Blake first got into the game industry, he was working on, a really cool sci-fi. I think it was an FPS, though.
It was.
And then he was hired on to work on some of these arcade games and some console games. And then shortly after that, I started getting into mobile development, so that we could eventually make a game like this. So that's kind of been my motivation this whole time, is getting to a point where we could make our own game. Yeah,
and when you are in mobile, you find that you end up getting pulled in a lot of directions for contract work. So that happened to us a lot. Yeah. So we never could really focus and hone in on exactly what we wanted to make. We made little small games here and there on when we had time, but this is really the big one for us.
Yeah, our first mobile game together was actually Chibi Chain Gun, which is kind of the mother of Kova in a way. The distant parent.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know you mentioned a bunch of inspirations of video games when you first started mentioning them. What other inspirations aside from games, though, like let's say music or writing or movies, that really you say, I really want to put this into one of my next projects? What was the main thing for you?
That's
There's so much.
Loaded question.
There's so much. I mean, like I said, we're huge fans of sci-fi, especially like stuff from James Cameron or Ridley Scott. I mean, their ability to tell a story, but also have the visual side has been a huge inspiration for us. We've been into like darker synthwave type of music,
Okay.
especially stuff that has like a dark sci-fi tone to it. So we're working with a composer that's into that kind of stuff too, and we're trying to come up with a really cool sound. I mean, it's not obviously it's going to take a lot of inspirations from tons of things, but in the end, I think even the demo that we came up with, that's shown in the trailer, I think it's hit some notes that are kind of different. We've had a lot of praise and comments about that so far. What else? What else are we inspired by?
I mean, it's so many sci-fis. Blade Runner, obviously.
We're really movie people.
Yeah.
We're not going to bust out any like authors or anything because we're like, I think both of us are pretty visual, but
yeah. I think a lot of people also pick up on some Firefly in the story.
Yeah, Firefly. There was another series we watched, Dark Matter, which was really cool. Yeah, I don't know.
Alien Terminator is a huge, like, I'm such a Terminator fan.
I guess you could almost say like anything that's on the edge of kind of a dark sci-fi in that realm. I mean, it can go either way. Like, I don't think Firefly is really a dark sci-fi or anything like that, but Dark Matter maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, the
it
latest,
wants to be.
Well, Josh Whedon has his ways, I guess, if you can consider that dark in some ways. I do know that the latest movie or adaptation, live action of Ghost in the Shell just came out last week. I haven't seen it. I hear it's flashy and looks good, but I don't think any of the themes of darkness or what does it mean to be alive in a cybernetic body? All these philosophical questions aren't there. So
No.
I'm not expecting you to whip out a Heidegger or something on my ass and say, okay, this is what life is now. But hopefully that some inspiration in the philosophical end of things are there to make us think. Now, we're going to jump to some questions now in chat. And one of them just asked, this was actually I wanted to ask myself as soon as I heard it from you guys when you talked about factions. And there are 3 factions in your game. Are there going to be RPG elements where you say, okay, I'm going to make a choice and it's going to benefit or hinder one of these factions? Are going to like you or dislike you as a result of that choice? Or is it who you kill or who you don't kill, that sort of thing?
So basically, depending on which faction you align with more, you'll have different payouts for that faction. And I think too, there's 2 primary factions, and then there's this rebel faction. And so the primary factions kind of work together under the table. So as long as you kind of align with them, you'll be okay. But I think all your dealings are kind of under the table. And it will also change your gameplay too, depending on which faction mission you choose. So our rebel faction, Ominous, they're kind of like the fighting for robotic rights. And if you take on some of their missions, you'll earn higher damage weapons, and you'll have more of like a explosive type missions. What's the word I'm looking for?
You mean weaponry?
No, the missions that you'll take on. Anyways, there'll be more sabotage style missions. Whereas like the IAA, which is the government agency, if you take on more of their missions, they're kind of headhunter missions. And then with the corporation, the Triadine Corporation, they're kind of into weaponry and robotics and manufacturing different things. Taking on their missions will be more, what's the word I'm thinking of?
This is the live interview part that we struggle with.
Yeah.
That's okay. Take your time. It's all right.
You'll be doing more like hacking, getting through to certain areas. But yeah, so different factions will have different style of missions.
Yeah,
they have your gameplay.
It will change up the gameplay, and also based on which factions that you get better rep with over time. you'll discover that you get the weapons that that faction uses. So, which also will change up the gameplay a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So like the ominous faction, which is kind of the rebellious faction, they may have more of a explosive types of weaponry, as opposed to like the IAA, which will have more of like the laser type of weapons. So I mean, and also you can choose to do these missions or not. So it's not like you have to go through them. There are points where you can fork off and say, I don't want to do these missions. So you can kind of align yourself more with one faction if you choose. I mean, it's pretty open.
Right. So is this?
Also too,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was also going to mention that each of the planets too might have a different faction that they align with more. So you'll be more accepted on different planets based on which faction you're aligning with.
Okay, so this alignment with a faction, I guess the general question is that, is this have a branching narrative that if you keep choosing missions for one faction, will that affect the story later on, or is it just going to be a series of missions where you get better and better gear with that faction?
It's more about your gear. The story and the gameplay, the story in the end will all kind of funnel into the same narrative.
Right, and just changing up slightly whenever you're changing different factions. But yeah, the whole storylines, it's going to eventually come to the same point. It's just a matter of the adventure along the way changes.
And the style of gameplay that you prefer, really.
Okay, so the gameplay, of course, is the metroidvania style. You find a new technique or ability that allows you to pass a certain obstacle. Are we looking at things reminiscent of, let's say, Castlevania or Legend of Zelda, where you have like a hook shot? Now you can go across chasms or go up or down. What's the verticality like? Are we traversing up and down? Are we going in between?
You're definitely going up and down. There's verticality. There's different player abilities like the way you move, like dashing or hovering. So that right now your character has a hover pack or a jet pack, whatever you want to call it, which you can upgrade along the way. So you could do like double jump, triple jump, then hover, and then you also have a battery that you can upgrade along the way, and those kind of will play against each other. So if you do upgrade your jetpack, like max it out, and so now you can hover for a pretty extended period of time. You also have to watch your battery meter because it'll put a strain on your energy usage. And so the gameplay will change based on these upgrades, because if you can imagine using your jetpack and you did a double jump and there's a bunch of enemies down below that you want to attack, and you can hover up there. If you're maxed out, you can just sit there up in the air aiming down at them and taking them out. But yeah, and there'll also be like wall jumping. So you'll have places that are gated until you have upgraded your abilities. So then that's kind of in the Metroid type of style. Right now, the demo world that we're in right now that we show the most of in the trailer, it's actually huge. It's a massive level, and you can't get to certain points right now until you upgrade your abilities, which is including like wall jumping and double jumping and dash.
And weapons as well.
And weapons, yeah.
Certain weapons will allow you to get through certain areas, get to certain areas as well.
I was about to ask about the weapons, because if you have a Metroidvania style game, you're obviously going to have walls that can be destroyable and pass through. And if you have certain obstacles that can only be destroyed by certain weapons, and that means you've obviously researched or found those weapons with those factions that give them to you. And now you can get past those obstacles. There we go. Okay, so that's a great aspect of gameplay. So based on your factions that you've done missions for, they give you the proper gear to traverse a certain part of the level. But if you didn't do that, you have to pass the level in some other way. Is that correct?
You say it so much more eloquently than we do.
Yeah.
So we just make it. We don't talk. We're not the PR people.
Okay, let's take some questions now from the audience here. Okay, they're asking, are there any companion characters? Are there side characters? Are there robo-dogs? And are there slaves? I don't know where the last one came through, but maybe it's part of the lore. You tell me.
Yeah, there are. There's not any robo-dogs, not yet, but we are fielding for ideas. But there are slaves on the the ominous side, that faction is fighting for robot rights, and that's because robots are basically put into, they're made to do a certain task, and then they're kind of discarded. And then, so there's been a movement for the rights of robots because they're advanced AI. Some people see them as it's kind of almost like in the Ghost in the Shell sense, except that she's a cyborg. But where are their rights end, or where do they start? What were some of the other questions? There's a robot dog.
No companions.
Companions. No.
Like we said, she's kind of a loner. She had a really rough past, and so in order to kind of save herself from, further emotional stress, she's kind of put up a wall around herself. So she keeps her distance. But some of the characters that you'll come in contact with are definitely on your side. Old acquaintances that you'll speak to.
Yeah, and some of them will have, they have backstories, and so you'll have like these NPCs that you'll interact with and do missions with, and as you go, they're revealing kind of like history. We have some backstory for Kova, which I don't think we've said a ton yet.
We're basically saving that for the whole storyline. So you'll learn more about her history.
You'll find out how she ties into these factions. Because up front, as a player, there's not a whole lot of, it's not laid out before the player, like exactly how Kova fits into a faction. You're playing kind of as your own character, and as the story develops, you'll see how her background was interwoven into these factions. Mm-hmm. That kind of went on a tangent, but.
No, it's always nice to know how many characters are the supporting cast, to see whether you need them, why you need them, what's the stories behind these characters. Are they involved with the plot? Are they there for providing keys to open doors? It's always, you don't have to obviously tell us everything. We just want to know how many relationships you can connect with, not in any gameplay mechanic, but as a way of developing the character. Because people, when they want to know about plots, they want to know about character development and all the problems.
There's no Mass Effect like sex scenes. Right. Like this out there.
Yeah, I wasn't going that way, but yeah, I know what you mean. Okay.
Just in case anybody out there was curious.
Oh, there's a wonderful guy in the chat. He's asking me a question here. Are there emotional moments in the game? That's a dramatic question about the structure of the story. I don't know if you want to reveal that, but if you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we'll keep it kind of vague, but in the storyline, there are points. It's kind of going back to what I mentioned before, how Kova's involvement into the factions. I think you could say that there are some emotional parts.
Yeah, if you're dealing with issues regarding robotic rights, I mean, we're talking about a futuristic setting where you're dealing with these issues of creating life and how they adapt to a society, whether they are their own society. And yeah, that's going to be a class struggle of some sort. So,
yeah, and that's kind of just inside. That's just inside of the main narrative. I mean, there's the main narrative of you discovering these beacons. Along the way, you're learning all these things, and you're learning things about your own character, about yourself, as Kova, which I think is probably going to be the more emotional part of the game. But it's not like the full narrative of the game. It's not like the end game.
But yeah, also all the politics surrounding each faction can get pretty emotional, pretty deep.
Yeah, there's a lot of like mad, like disgruntled mercenaries and townfolk out there that you encounter.
I would imagine a mercenary lifestyle meets all sorts of colorful characters, really. So you're going to be encountering quite a lot of destitutes and power mongers and all sorts of nefarious fellows trying to cut a buck or doing whatever they're doing. Let's see, a few more questions from the audience here. Is there some sort of loot system or some sort of crafting system, like when you kill an enemy, they drop something, or you get resources and you make your own weapons? Is there anything like that in the game here?
Definitely.
Yeah. We actually have, it's kind of a mix. I mean, the whole game, we always do this to ourselves where we like to like make things hard and not draw completely on an existing formula. We try to push the boundaries a bit, but it's kind of a mix where there are crafting aspects to the game, but it's not like No Man's Sky or something where you have to like mine every single material and find every single data plan or what do they call them, schematic recipe or whatever. It's kind of, we have like a more of a stripped down kind of action oriented crafting mechanic where we're calling it quick crafting. So there are certain like elements that you can do, that you can have in your UI where you can quickly craft it, like a for example, like a health pack. You can quickly craft one of those like on the fly. Like you can be out in the field, you know the recipe for it because it's always the same. You don't have to find the recipe for it. You just gotta go get the stuff, and then you can quickly craft it like wherever you are, whenever you're at, or wherever you're at, whenever. And then we also have an engineer that you visit that basically is required. You have to visit the engineer to craft new parts for your ship, which is another gating mechanic before you can get to other planets.
Okay.
And he'll be putting you on missions that you have to go find these things and come back to him. So there is crafting, but it's not in the sense of like Minecraft or No Man's Sky or something like that.
Yeah, basically what we have that you can craft right now, different ammo for primary weapons, grenades, your battery pack refills, and health packs. And then also, like, as you're visiting planet to planet, every time you land and take off, you're using fuel, you're using your life support systems, you're needing to maintain your landing gear, things like that. So you'll also...
So if you're jumping between planets constantly, you know, for whatever reason, like maybe you found a loophole where you can like, you know, mine a bunch of things and be able to create all these health packs or something like that, you still have to maintain your ship every time you do that. So if you take off and land, you're going to have to like repair your landing gear. You're going to have to refuel your ship and do all these things. So that, I don't want to say we're penalizing players for doing that, but we're just keeping balance in there.
It sounds like a very... Sorry, go ahead.
But go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was sounding like a very RPG flavor of Metroid. You're constantly traveling, going here and there. One thing I was thinking...
sorry.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about with Metroid is because Samus is such a silent protagonist, and you are doing Kickstarter, this is what I recommend to anyone doing Kickstarting who's doing a game, is voice acting. I don't know if that's a stretch goal, or if you're not having it at all. Are you going to be having any sorts of acting for your main character or the side characters as well?
Basically, what we want to do is keep Kova's voice up to your imagination. You know, the second you kind of give her a voice, it changes your whole perception of her. And so we do want to leave that up to, you know, the players. There is going to be a lot of dialogue, but it's a lot of written dialogue. Mm-hmm. And we also, you know, of course, we're a really small team, and you know, we're indies, so but we are planning on having this game localized in several different languages, and so that's another barrier for us.
Yeah,
right.
But it is true, like as much as it's I guess a logistics thing for having voice acting. There's a lot of games where I'll play, even the new Zelda that I'm playing through now. There'll be times where there's like a character that just sounds really goofy to me, and it kind of takes me out a little bit. And so, I mean, that is a thing where we want the player to kind of fill in, like, what does this character sound like to them? What is their, you know, when they see this character in this world and they're reading this dialogue, we do want them to kind of fill in that gap.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it, because when I think of stories or any sort of RPGs, I want a lot of text. I want to read a story. I want to see it play out. And sometimes when you give it a feeling with an actor or an actress, it all of a sudden limits that imagination. You're sort of focusing on that character voice, and yeah, to keep it open-ended. I'm filling in the blanks. I'm actually thinking, okay, this is my mercenary. She's going to do this or that. So that's a rather a cost-effective as well as imaginative way of dealing with mixed media and only using the proper format, or in this case, text. So that
Yeah,
was
we're going to be putting a lot of effort too in sound design outside of, you know, any kind of voice acting, because we won't be doing voice acting, but we want to make sure that there's tons of feeling and mood at any moment during the game. So void of feeling, you know, I don't think that it's really like that we're missing anything by not having voice acting. Personally.
That's totally fine. I mean, this is your creative enterprise. It sounds like it's an interesting project. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the stream regarding your project?
We'll be releasing more information on Tuesday, so you can stay tuned on the Kickstarter there. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll have a stream going where we'll be playing the game. And so basically going through the first level. So basically, if you want to stay updated on all the events that we're going to be doing,
just check out the Kickstarter.
Check out the Kickstarter.
Yeah, we'll be doing continuous updates throughout the campaign.
Yep. And every Friday we'll be streaming.
Even if you pledge now, which we hope you do, you can always change your pledge if something cool that we change comes out.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah, I think that's.
Well, thank you very much, Blake and Mandy, and everyone else on the stream. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see more from Kova, a side-scrolling action science fiction RPG.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Those are good questions. I love them.